by the way, also, well, that ends something happened to my card. I think when I went to the Sunday market, and then my debit card got shut off. My credit card was shut off. I'm getting note alerts to my credit cards of like, find your social security number on the black web. Yes. Well, I mean, they're all investigating it, but
the last one would always be that.
in the meantime, I had to get all my cards. So at least the bank was great, and they helped me put the new card that's still in the mail.
All right, good morning, everybody. Could you find your way to your seats, please? It is 8:30 and it is 8:30 and we are in day 2.5 of Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board quarterly meeting. And first up is public comment, and I want to welcome you all here this morning, and thanks for being here. We have a lot of people signed up for public comment, so I am going to limit you to 2 minutes. And during this public comment, we are seeking additional information only, no questions. So just clarifying questions, but no additional information from any of our public comment speakers today. And you can all guess what our public comment theme is going to be today, and we will cover anything we hear today under discussion of other business at the end of the meeting. So just to let you know, we're not going to table the conversation. We're going to take it up towards the end of the meeting. All right, so first up is Andrea Kreiner.
So good morning. For the record, my name is Andrea Kreiner, and I am the Executive Director of the Oregon Association of Conservation Districts. You have some written comments from us. I just want to focus on a little bit of that today. And first, I want to reiterate how we strongly support OWEB's request for increased agency staff, continuity, and capacity. It's imperative that OWEB has sufficient long-term capacity to effectively manage the expanding realm of grant offerings for which it has responsibility. We strongly request that the board recognizes the need for increased capacity funding for districts and the Conservation Partnership when you do your spending plan. I want to focus here on the districts. Our districts are being asked to do more. They're the boots on the ground for much of the ag water quality work, as well as restoration work under Measure 76, technical assistance under the new Natural and Working Lands Fund, and the federally funded projects that the fund is being used as match for. This increase in workload also involves the need for management and project support that is not directly fundable through project funding. There's also a need to maintain our knowledgeable and experienced staff in between the projects so that they can most effectively use their grant monies on the projects and not continually training new staff each time a new project starts. So there is more, as I said, in our written comments. I don't need to repeat them all here. I just wanted to make sure we emphasize the need for capacity funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. So up next is Whitney Rohner, and on deck is Phil Chang.
Good morning. Excuse me. My allergies are terrible today. I'm Whitney Rohner. I'm the district manager for the 4 SWCDs here in Baker County. This is Tim Kearns. He is the chairperson of our Baker County Association of Conservation Districts. And we will not take very much time. We want to thank OWEB for your continued support and funding and coming over to Baker County. We appreciate you being here. Right now, at current, just to give you kind of an update, right now we have $1,317,976 in OWEB funding that we're implementing between our 4 districts. Our match with that is $1,246,230. So we're running about 100% cost share, which is great. We've got really eager and willing landowners, and without OWEB's continued support, we wouldn't be able to do the water quality work on the ground that we're doing. So I just want to stress to you that the problems that we're facing with our districts is we need a little increase in our capacity funding. It's really difficult right now to maintain and continue to maintain good qualified staff. Cost of living has gone up. Private sector is very competitive, especially since COVID. COVID changed the dynamic of everything and being able to work remotely. So it's difficult for me to remain competitive right now with salaries. So we could use a little bump in our capacity grant, as well as the increased costs of operating, fuel, paper, everything. The costs have gone up, and we're just not getting enough in our capacity grant to maintain a high level of service for our landowners. We're having to use an awful lot of our general fund money and personal funds. Tara and Corey and I are pretty dedicated to our jobs, and so that's my plug, is we need a little bit more money, but thank you, OWEB, for everything that you do. Without you, we would not be able to continue to do the work that we're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, and I think everybody else is going to be virtual this morning, and we have Phil Chang. I see your hand is up. Are you letting him in? Okay.
They're all going to be, they've all declined to be panelists, so it's going to be audio only.
Okay.
So he should be able to unmute and talk now.
Commissioner Chang, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
All right, welcome. And we're going to give you 2 minutes this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Phil Chang. I am a commissioner in Deschutes, county commissioner in Deschutes County. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment today. I hear there is concern about the Paulina Creek Preserve project taking land out of agricultural production. And as a county commissioner with quasi-judicial land use authority, and as a natural resource professional who has worked for over 20 years in the Deschutes Basin to shore up water supply reliability for basin farmers, I can assure you that I am concerned about preserving ranching in my community too, and I still strongly support the proposed acquisition. The reality of real estate in Deschutes County is that if this property was not purchased by the land trust, it would be chunked up and converted to a handful of luxury homes with hobby ranches attached. If you doubt that forecast, you can just look at some of the appraisals for the property that play out that very scenario. So preventing this acquisition wouldn't necessarily help local ranchers very much. In addition, I know OWEB has seen enough floodplain restoration projects to have a sense that the forage potential of this land has been greatly diminished by channelizing the creek and depriving the meadow area of subsurface irrigation. The restoration work planned for this floodplain area will dramatically increase the forage productivity of this property without having to apply supplemental irrigation. And this enhanced productivity will benefit big game populations and could also provide benefit to livestock if OWEB wanted to, say, add conditions to this acquisition, that there would still be grazing allotments or permitted activity on the property. So with that, I would encourage you to support this project and the benefits that it will provide to the watershed, to local agriculture, to wildlife populations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Up next is Kelly Beamer, and after that is on deck is Kate Fitzpatrick. Kelly, can you hear me?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, Chair Boyer, members of the OWEB board. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today. I'm before you as a citizen of Oregon and the former executive director of the Coalition of Oregon Land Trusts. I served that role for 11 years and was proud to represent the work of land trusts across Oregon. I'm concerned about the board decision yesterday not to fund the Polina Creek Preserve. Measure 76, as you all know, includes a mandate to protect and restore native fish and wildlife habitat. It was passed by the voters in Oregon in every single county, and land trusts are really critical partners with OWEB to fulfill the mandate of Measure 76. Paulina Creek Preserve is an incredible example of an opportunity to provide habitat uplift to protect and restore. You all have been to Waichus Canyon and know the power of acquisition and restoration on a voluntary level and what we can do together. Staff evaluated this project and found the merits to achieve the goals of Measure 76. The OWEB staff had decades of experience and are incredibly talented in their evaluation. So I just want to ask a reconsideration of this decision, given the fact it was the only acquisition on this cycle. It's an incredible and a very important opportunity for the board to fulfill its mandate to the voters to protect land. Lastly, the outreach done in this project was exemplary. I was working at the Coalition of Oregon Land Trust while Deschutes Land Trust spent a year getting input from the community, from tribal members, knocking on doors, and that's now used as a blue ribbon standard approach to how we do acquisitions. So there was deep community support received for this project. So thank you very much for the opportunity to comment today.
Thank you, Kelly. Kate Fitzpatrick, can you hear me?
I can. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Chair McAllister, Chair Boyer, and members of the OWEB board. Good morning. My name is Kate Fitzpatrick, and I'm the Executive Director of the Deschutes River Conservancy, a 501c3 nonprofit based in Bend, Oregon. Thank you for the opportunity to provide input. I'm here to state strong support for the Deschutes Land Trust Paulina Creek Stewardship Proposal. The DRC was formed in 1996 by the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, irrigation, and environmental interests, and our mission is to restore stream flow and water quality in the Deschutes Basin using collaboration and consensus while supporting agriculture and other uses of water. Our board of directors includes irrigation, environmental, and tribal interests and operates by consensus. DRC has restored significant flows to our basin's rivers through working closely with irrigated agriculture. We restore flows using temporary leases, permanent in-stream transfers, and allocations of conserved water through the state's program. OWEB has funding programs that support all these tools, including a water acquisitions grant program. The DRC also helps convene the Deschutes Basin Water Collaborative, which is 47 members working to meet long-term water needs for rivers, ag, and cities in the Deschutes. And this group enjoys broad support for meeting all the needs in the basin, including using in-stream flow transactions as one of the tools. Why are we restoring flows and engaging in water transactions? Many of our rivers were left behind through the prior appropriation system over a century ago. So in 1987, the state recognized this and gave us some voluntary tools to restore flows, including in the In-Stream Water Rights Act. This includes permanent in-stream transactions. Importantly, the In-Stream Water Rights Act specifically provides for the transfer of senior water rights in-stream to help make an impact on in-stream needs. And every transaction goes through an injury review analysis with the Oregon Water Resources Department and is not approved or conditioned if injury is found. Again, OWEB has a water acquisitions program specifically set up to help fund these transactions. I would also like to mention that in the Deschutes, we operate under the Deschutes Groundwater Mitigation Program, which is designed to permit new groundwater access specifically for groups like cities to meet future needs, only if they can offset that water by permanently protecting existing senior water rights in stream. So in the Deschutes, we need in-stream transactions as a tool to help meet balanced needs in the basin. So specifically, the DRC supports the Land Trust Stewardship of Paulina Creek Preserve proposal. It does seem like the decision yesterday may be a little problematic with other goals, policies, and grant programs run by both OWEB and OWRD. So again, thank you for the support. The Deschutes Basin really overarchingly supports balanced solutions in the basin that do include in-stream transactions alongside supporting agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Martino is up next, and then Karen Ripberger is on deck, please. Marty, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, OWEB board, and thank you for the opportunity to comment this morning. My name is Amanda Martino, or Marty, and I'm the Executive Director of Blue Mountain Land Trust, and I'm also the board president for the Coalition of Oregon Land Trusts. COLT is a nonprofit membership organization that represents 31 member organizations, including land trusts, soil and water conservation districts, conservation organizations working to protect clean water, fish and wildlife habitat across the state. The work of our member organizations has protected over 290,000 acres of Oregon's land. COLT's member organizations have a long partnership with OWEB, including the use of the Land Acquisition Grant Program. We are gravely concerned about the results of yesterday's board decision to reverse the OWEB staff recommendation to fund Deschutes Land Trust purchase of the Paulina Creek Preserve. Measure 76 explicitly states that its first purpose is to protect and restore water quality, watersheds, and habitats for native fish and wildlife for current and future generations of Oregonians. The Paulina Creek Preserve project does just that, protecting ponderosa and lodgepole pine forests, wet and dry meadows, and miles of Paulina Creek. Protection and restoration of this property provides important habitat for a variety of OWEB's priority species and helps achieve OWEB's stated climate goals by providing connections to the Newberry National Volcanic Monument and the adjacent lands protected by Western River.
But they already purchased this, didn't? Yeah.
OWEB's Land Acquisition Grant Program is designed to fund land acquisition projects that protect native fish and wildlife, watersheds, and water quality in Oregon. The program's constitutional mandate, including its lottery funding source, its program application, evaluation criteria, and funding decisions, should support projects that first and foremost protect Oregon's native fish and wildlife habitat. We strongly support the Paulina Creek Preserve, its direct accomplishments, OWEB's conservation and restoration goals, and urge the board to reconsider its decision. Land protection projects further restoration efforts, secure public investments and habitat improvements, and play a vital role in our state's future availability of clean water, quality fish and wildlife habitat, and health of our human communities. Deschutes Land Trust has worked extensively with its community, including tribal partners, neighboring land managers, residents, and local leaders to define community values for the property and build support for this project. We urge—
Marty, can you wrap it up, please?
We strongly urge OWEB to reconsider and support this project as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Karen Ripberger, and then Russ Hoflick is after that. Karen, are you there?
She is, but she needs to unmute.
Karen, can you unmute yourself, please? All right, I'm going to move on down to Russ while Karen figures out some of her audio. Russ, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the OWEB board today. I was troubled to hear about the decision about the Paulina project, and as one of the prime architects of Measure 66 and then Measure 76, I was compelled to come to you today to ask for you to reconsider the Paulina project. This project is consistent with the fundamentals that were designed in the Constitution to preserve and protect native fish and wildlife habitat. And it is absolutely essential that you step back, reflect upon your constitutional mandate, and reconsider the vote that was made yesterday, that narrow focused decision, whether cattle are actually operating on this preserve or not, in the future or presently, is not relevant in these times, and it is not relevant to the constitutional mandate that was given to the board. Specifically, the fish and wildlife habitat in the face of climate change, in the face of a ecosystem services need for these properties to be interconnected, to be able to be preserved and protected as a whole for the benefit of the entire state, is absolutely critical. And I urge you to take every action possible to step back and reflect upon your basic core mission and to support the staff recommendation that was put in front of you to affirmatively support this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Karen, can you hear me?
We lost Karen.
Oh.
Hopefully she'll be able to rejoin.
Okay, thank you. Josh Kling is next, and then on deck is Rika Ayote. Josh, can you hear me?
I don't see him on here.
Okay. Rika, are you on the phone?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Chair McAllister and Chair Boyer and the OWEB board members. My name is Rika Ayat, and I'm the Executive Director of Deschutes Land Trust. I'd like to take this opportunity to respond to questions raised by OWEB board members regarding our acquisition proposal for Paulina Creek Preserve. From the moment the property was listed in 2020, the Land Trust received dozens of calls from agency partners, community members, and conservation groups to prevent this culturally significant and ecologically critical property and meadow from future partitioning and development. 2 years after the initial listing on the property, no agricultural buyer had emerged and partitioning was imminent. We purchased the property with full-throated support of neighbors, agencies, and elected officials. After our purchase, we spoke with over 150 community members to understand the community's values and to create a community vision for the future of Paulina Creek Preserve. Aside from one commenter, we did not hear a local desire to resume agricultural production. Rather, the community identified values like habitat for plants and animals, a restored Paulina Creek, wildfire resiliency, and learning opportunities for youth. In addition, Klamath tribes on whose ceded lands this property is positioned has roundly supported our conservation efforts, not only for the benefit and restoration of access to their first foods and medicines, but because Paulina Meadow is an area of critical cultural significance. Now, with the acquisition by Western Rivers of the confluence of Paulina Creek and the Little Deschutes River, we have the very rare opportunity to achieve source to confluence protection of a creek that flows out of a caldera down the side of a volcano and provides critical recharge to the Deschutes River and enhances habitat for the threatened Oregon spotted frog. The OWEB board is voting to reject this proposal not because it doesn't meet the grant criteria, which it unequivocally does, but because there are members who respectfully don't live in our community who believe this property they have never visited should be a cattle ranch. If unfunded, the Land Trust could be forced to relist the property for sale and are confident that luxury residential development would be the ensuing outcome. The communities of Lapine and Sun River and the hundreds of citizens who support our efforts will be disappointed, to say the least. I would urge OWEB board members to set activism aside and look not only at the technical merits of the proposal, but at the broad community support for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Rika. All right, last call for Karen Rittberger.
I don't see her, I'm sorry.
Okay. And then last call for Josh Kling.
If he's on Zoom, could he raise his hand? No, I'm sorry. I don't.
Okay. All right, that is all for public comment. Thank you, everybody. We hear you, and thank you for participating in our public process.
Okay, we're at agenda item L.
Oh.
At our committee updates, page 515, and we'll start with our DEI committee. Stephanie and Amy?
All right, and Kelly and Dan, are one of you prepared to give the DEI committee update and present the updated draft resolution?
We are, and Kelly has a lead on this.
All right.
Good morning, everyone. Apologies that I can't be there in person. But I don't know that you guys would want me there. My allergies are insane right now. For the record, my name is Kelly Coates, and I am the tribal representative on the OWEB board. And I am also the co-chair along with Dan Shively for the DEI committee. I'll just give a quick update. I know it's in our board packet of what we discussed at the last meeting, but just a quick overview. We received an Environmental Justice Council update, and we discussed outreach to new partners and non-traditional partners. And then we spent the majority of our time discussing our DEI resolution and equity statement. So I'm going to walk you through that. So today, I'm bringing the draft final DEI resolution that has been reviewed by the DEI committee and forwarded to the board for consideration. This is located in your board packet in the committee updates. Just to review really quickly how we got here, the board first started discussing a DEI resolution at the July 2022 meeting in Enterprise. The DEI committee then worked on a draft and has revised the draft in committee several times since then. We've shared and presented the draft with the DAS Office of Cultural Change, the Racial Justice Council, Environmental Equity Committee, and a few individual partners, and have incorporated their feedback. The draft was presented to the board in January for feedback, and staff gathered feedback from board members after the meeting. Staff did more editing following that conversation. OWEB staff had a chance to ask questions and provide feedback on the draft at a February all-staff meeting, and the current draft incorporates the edits from that discussion as well. The DEI committee then reviewed the updated draft resolution one more time at our March meeting and determined that the updated version was ready to send back to the board for review. Changes to the resolution from the last time you saw it are shown in track changes in the version in the board packet. I'll highlight a few of these changes just to keep everybody updated. Wording changes to express an inclusive intent to serve all Oregonians and express the intent of the board to address systematic biases while being inclusive of all Oregonians and serving both rural and urban areas. We remove the word redistribution, replace that with equitable distribution. A wording change to ensure near urban as well as urban areas are considered. Incorporation of a reference to a definition of natural and working lands established during the 2023 legislative session, which is a very inclusive definition that includes working agriculture and forest lands, urban and near urban lands, recreational lands, and reservation and tribal trust lands. This addition was made to language regarding increasing project types in urban and near urban areas. An addition of a note to fund projects accordingly in order to support fair compensation. A few changes were made in response to feedback from the OWEB staff meeting, including language indicating OWEB should make programs accessible through support of applicants and grantees throughout the grant-making process, and language clarifying the DEI plan will be reviewed annually rather than developed annually. There's clarification about what we mean by budget and budgeting processes to indicate that it means both the budget development process and spending plan. So I'm presenting the resolution to you today for one more discussion opportunity, and then the board will hold a vote on the resolution at its July meeting. This has been our practice, to present the draft in its final form and then vote on it at the following meeting to give everyone time. We do have the ability to live edit today, thanks to Amy. So if there are some minor changes that board members would still like to see made, we can do that at this time. And we only have about 10 or 15 minutes on this. So what I'd like to do now is hear from the board and ask if anyone has any questions or if anyone would like to do any live editing, or if we feel comfortable moving the draft as is forward to our July meeting for a vote.
Thank you, Kelly. Any comments, questions, discussion today? Mark Labart, please.
Well, I wonder if we could just insert the word bold throughout the presentation there. It was an attempt to be humorous, folks. It looks great.
Thank you. Okay, Kelly, I don't see any other hands up or concerns, so thank you very much. Thanks for all the hard work.
Thank you. And I do want to take just a quick opportunity here to thank Bruce Buckmaster for all of the work that he's done on this. And I want to thank Mrs. B.
The real work.
Yeah, thank you.
So Liz, you should probably note, I don't feel comfortable enough with that yet. So I'll probably abstain in July. Is that all right?
Sure.
Because I haven't been a part of the conversation, so I don't want to hold things up.
Yep, Yep, and if in between now and then, access committee members, anyone for clarifications, you bet. And Jamie, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just saying, we've been talking about this for, I don't know how many years, so I'm super excited that we're actually going to be able to vote on it. And thanks to everyone who's worked so hard on it. And Mark, you've got 3 months to look at it. There's been a tremendous amount of work and thought that's gone into it. So just thanks to the DEI committee and all the work you've done, and really excited about being able to vote on it in July.
Thank you. And I appreciate having time to soak on really important work. I'm glad that we take that time, and that we're arriving is wonderful. Kelly.
All right, one more thank you, and that is to the OWEB staff for everything that they've done with this. Just really appreciate all the work you guys put into it.
Thank you. You're here. Okay, we'll move on to our Water and Climate Committee report, please.
Yeah, I'll jump in, and then Bruce, my co-chair, can follow up if I missed something. We've got notes on the specifics that we covered, but wanted to just give the board an overview of the approach and the conversations we're having as part of our committee meeting. We're starting, of course, with public engagement and really trying to engage the public in the work and in the conversations, those deep dive conversations we're having around water and climate in our committee work. And then intersectionality is also really key. So we're looking at other agencies, other state agencies. So we doing a lot of deep dives into what other agencies are doing and some of those overlaps and crossover between the work to understand what others are doing, what we can be doing, and have those conversations. Also what other organizations are doing, and even other OWEB work. And so our agenda is actually laid out to have those conversations. And then we look at things that we're looking at now and that need additional conversation and in-depth conversation, so that can be elevated to the board for consideration on different issues. We're inviting input on what issues that we might be discussing from the public. And then we also have a running list of things that have been added and been suggested, but we're running through that list on a meeting by meeting basis, so we can have the time to do deeper dives and have those deeper conversations. So if there's board members or members of the public who are interested in having us go through specific issues that are related to water or climate, we really invite those and welcome those. And then again, that intersectionality between some of the different organizational agencies. We most recently had a conversation with DEQ folks, and looking at also some of the other state natural resource agencies to get a sense of the things we're doing, the things they're doing, what might be overlap, and where there also might be gaps. But otherwise, the specifics on our meeting are covered in the notes. But again, want to really welcome folks to share thoughts on things we could be covering. And then Bruce, if I missed anything, please add.
No, I think you did a great job, Jamie. My only other comment would be, there was a question after we adopted unanimously the resolution, what a committee, the Water and Climate Committee, would have to do. And what we found is a great deal, actually, and the deep dives. The emerging technologies and approaches to how we deal with climate resilience and the input from various members of this board, their agencies, it's been a vibrant committee. And Mark, I'd ask you to consider joining it. So thank you.
Climate Committee, I'm from Eastern Oregon.
Thank you, Bruce and Jamie. Any other comments, questions? Great. Okay. Good work. Our Grants Committee is next.
Hi, Dan Brown, co-chair of the Grants Committee with Barbara Boyer. And we had an amazing meeting in March. This is a perfect tee up for the conversation that's coming next on the FIPs, but what an incredible gathering of people who have compassion, passion, and dedication to doing amazing work on the lands in Oregon. And it was just amazing how many people showed up who were responsive to our interviews. And that is all reflected in the recommendations that the committee made to you all. That's on the agenda next.
So, yeah, staff did a great job to set the tone of the meeting. It was really well done. We are really prepared because of all their work. So yeah, that process, I want it repeated every time. I think it worked out really well.
Yeah, and a shout out to Mark as well, because he helped us. We had a lot in front of us, and he helped us pause and give people the opportunity to feel welcomed and introduce themselves without being on the clock, because there was a lot of people. Thank you for that, Mark.
All right, that is a great tee up, isn't it? So our next agenda item is M, and we are doing the FIP Awards. So we have Eric Hartstein, Jillian, Denise, Eric Williams, and Audrey this morning.
There we go.
Co-chairs, members of the board, good to see you again today, day 3 of our board meeting. And we are deep into our ebook today for agenda item M, which begins on page 525. And in there, you'll see the staff report with the staff recommendation, along with all of the evaluations for these applications. This is an exciting time for us as staff because we only do this once every 2 years. And this, as you all know, is the culmination for this biennium of a process that began many years ago with the board's vision for a long-term investment strategy that included long-term investment with hopefully measurable change to ecological outcomes across Oregon's landscape. So we're excited to be here. I'm Eric Williams, the Restoration Grant Manager. To my left, your right, is Denise Hoffert and Jillian McCarthy, Partnerships Coordinators. To my right, your left, Eric Hartstein, Policy Coordinator, and Audrey Hatch, Conservation Outcomes Coordinator. This is our FIP team, and it's a great team, let me tell you. And what we'd like to do today, though, is walk through our process that led us here to these recommendations. Dan described it a little bit in his Grants Committee update, which is a different process than any other offering that we have here, and with good reason, because it is a 6-year funding commitment for these partnerships. And so just a brief summary of the program and its goals. There are 7 board-identified priorities that FIP must address, and each of those priorities has a memo with a map describing its geography, describing the characteristics and restoration needs for that particular habitat type. And for applications to be successful, they need to achieve clear and measurable ecological outcomes that address those board-identified priorities. And to do that, they have to have a detailed strategic action plan that describes how they're going to get from their actions to those ecological outcomes. And the results chains that we've talked about over the past few years are a graphic representation of that. And each of the applications before you have those detailed results chains in them. And finally, the last component of the FIP program is that these are implemented by high-performing partnerships. These are multiple organizations that are coming together around common goals that importantly have to have a governance structure that allows them to make difficult decisions. And as you know, as a board, sometimes when you're dealing with money, decisions are difficult. And that is one of the things that a high-performing partnership can do well. These are the 7 ecological priority types that the board has identified: oak, woodland, and prairie habitat, sagebrush, sage steppe habitat, coho habitat, Oregon closed lakes, basin, wetlands habitat, aquatic habitat for native fish species, dry type forest habitat, and coastal estuaries in Oregon. And you'll see on the map that shows the funded FIPs that we've funded to date. Whoops, I think I stopped sharing. My apologies. Let me get back. What? Sorry, okay. Oh, we're back to this. There we go. Okay. And if you look on this map here, you'll see the distribution of the FIP cohorts that have been funded to date. Along the left side are the 3 cohorts that have been funded, the names of them. They're all mapped here. And with funding of cohort 3 last biennium, we achieved having FIPs in each of those 7 ecological priority types. On this map, you'll see the 3 cohorts that have been funded, and then the red circles are the 4 partnerships that are recommended for funding in this biennium. Let me make sure I don't do that again. There we go. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Audrey to talk about our award timeline.
Thank you. Audrey Houch, Conservation Outcomes Coordinator, to briefly go over a couple key events in the timeline leading up to today. OWEB opened the solicitation for this cohort of FIPs in May of 2023, and staff consulted with potential applicants to go over the FIP program and application process. 5 applications were received in October. OWEB assembled an expert review team, which convened in January of this year to discuss the applications in alignment with the FIP program criteria. That expert review team included 4 individuals with expertise specifically in high-functioning partnerships, and 10 individuals with ecological expertise in each of the FIP ecological priorities that was represented in this suite of applications for the cohort. Additionally, OWEB's Conservation Outcomes Coordinator reviewed the applications with an emphasis on measurable ecological outcomes and reviewed their detailed strategic action plans. Following that expert review team meeting's thorough discussion, review team members ranked the initiative applications in priority order. These results informed the grants committee interviews that were held with each partnership in March of this year. For those interviews in March, each initiative application was assigned to a lead grant committee member to really lead that dialogue with the partnership during the interview. And now the results from those grant committee discussions are presented to the full board for funding consideration.
Good morning, OWEB board. I'm Denise Hoffer, Partnerships Coordinator. OWEB FIP Partnership Coordinators will now present a summary of the initiative level application that we were lead staff on. These summaries were provided to OWEB as part of the application process. The Hood River Watershed Group, located in OWEB's Region 4, submitted a FIP application to support the Hood River Basin Partnership's Hood River Basin Aquatic Habitat Restoration Initiative. This initiative addresses OWEB's ecological priority for aquatic habitat for native fish species. This was the top ranked application by the expert review team. The partnership's funding request for each biennium is outlined in the table shown here and totals just over $10 million. To follow on my colleagues' presentations from yesterday's open solicitation grant awards, I'm also providing a fun fact about this geography. The Hood River watershed is one of 12 primary cold water refuges in the lower 325 miles of the Columbia River. These refuges are important for migrating adult salmonids, particularly summer steelhead and fall chinook. The EPA's Columbia River Cold Water Refuge Plan notes that the average water temperatures at the mouth of the Hood River in August are 15.5 degrees Celsius, which is 6 degrees cooler than the Columbia. This illustrates that this initiative's proposed restoration projects will benefit salmon and steelhead at a regional scale, including adult summer steelhead, that have been the focus of OWEB's FIP investments in upstream basins, including the Grand Ronde and John Day Rivers. The Hood River Basin's partnership's core partners include Hood River Watershed Group, Hood River Soil and Water Conservation District, Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs, East Fork Irrigation District, Farmers Irrigation District, Middle Fork Irrigation District, U.S. Forest Service Hood River Ranger District, and the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. Key ecological outcomes to be addressed through the implementation of this FIP include increased productivity of salmon, steelhead, lamprey, and other resident native fish, increased upstream and floodplain habitat quality, diversity, and complexity, increased in-stream habitat availability, and increased support for and actions implemented by community members to benefit aquatic habitat and conservation. FIP funding will focus on the highest priority irrigation delivery and on-farm conservation projects, in-stream and floodplain habitat restoration, community engagement, and restoration project design, as well as project effectiveness monitoring. The proposed scope of work is consistent with OWEB's aquatic habitat for native fish species FIP priority. I'll now turn it to my colleague Jillian.
Good morning. Next up is the Klamath Lake Forest Health Partnership. The vision for the Klamath Lake Forest Health Partnership is to create a healthy, resilient, and functional forest landscape maintained with fire as an ecological process, while mitigating the threat of high-severity wildfire to dry forests, fish and wildlife habitat, water quality, and the surrounding human communities. The proposed ecological outcomes of the initiative include developing a short and long-term strategy for prescribed fire, engaging with private landowners on dry forest restoration principles, restoring dry forest landscape resiliency, restoring healthy aspen, meadow, and shrub steppe habitats, and reintroducing prescribed fire as a key ecological process. These outcomes would be accomplished through strategic thinning, prescribed fire, and noxious weed treatments completed by core partners that include the Klamath Lake Forest Health Partnership, Lake County Umbrella Watershed Council, Fremont-Winema National Forest, National Resources Conservation Service, Oregon Department of Forestry, Oregon State University Extension, Lake County Resources Initiative, Lake County Cooperative Weed Management Area, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Nature Conservancy, and the University of Oregon. As you can see on the slide, they are applying under the dry type forest habitat priority. The applicant is Lake County Umbrella Watershed Council. The initiative geography is within OWEB's Region 4, Central Oregon, and this application ranked 2 out of 5. You can see the funding table there. They are requesting $12 million over the 6 years of the FIP. And I will pass it over to Eric Hartstein.
Thank you. For the record, Eric Hartstein. So next up, we have the Oregon Sage Grouse Partnership, which is formerly known as the Oregon All Counties CCAA Steering Committee. So the partnership is requesting nearly $10 million over the 6 years of a FIP initiative, and they are applying under the sagebrush, sage steppe habitat priority. The applicant is the Crook County Soil and Water Conservation District. In addition to the Crook SWCD, the other core partners on the initiative are Harney, Lakeview, and Malheur Soil and Water Conservation Districts, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The partnership works to implement actions prescribed in conservation plans with landowners for sage grouse. These actions include controlling the spread of annual invasive grasses, reducing juniper cover, and managing grazing practices to benefit sage grouse. Over 3 biennia associated with the FIP, the partnership would develop, implement, and monitor the long-term conservation plans with a focus on high priority areas and connecting those sage grouse strongholds. The initiative geography is in both OWEB regions 4 and 5, so Central and Eastern Oregon, and this application ranked 3 out of the 5 applications submitted. And then back over to you, Jillian.
Thank you, Eric. Next up, we have the Harney Basin Wetlands Collaborative. The Harney Basin Wetlands Collaborative partners include the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, Ducks Unlimited, NRCS, USGS, Portland Audubon, Wet Meadow Partners, Harney Soil and Water Conservation District, County Court, Friends of Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, Intermountain West Joint Venture, Harney County Watershed Council, Eastern Oregon Agricultural Research Center, Bird Conservation Oregon, and the Burns Paiute Tribe. Priority projects will include carp reduction, management tools to control invasive plant species, replacement of aging infrastructure, floodplain reconnection and riparian restoration, and aquatic habitat management for wetland restoration. Measurable outcomes will be relative carp population size, emergent vegetation area in Malheur Lake wetlands, relative abundance of breeding birds, shorebirds, and migratory water birds, and acres of flood irrigated wet meadows managed to optimize available water use for forage and habitat value. This application is coming in under the Oregon Closed Lakes Basin Wetlands Habitat Priority. The applicant is the High Desert Partnership. It's located within OWEB's Region 5, Eastern Oregon geography. In this application, ranked 4 out of 5. They're requesting just over $8.2 million for the 6 years of the FIP. And then finally, we have the Nehalem Basin Partnership. Primary partners within the Nehalem-Coho Habitat Initiative are the Upper and Lower Nehalem Watershed Councils, Lower Nehalem Community Trust, and the Tillamook Estuaries Partnership. The Nehalem-Coho Habitat Initiative focuses on addressing primary and secondary limiting factors for Oregon Coast Coho by increasing stream complexity and riparian cover in focal watersheds. The initiative aims to increase the scale and scope of large wood placement, riparian and upslope restoration with a focus on prioritized anchor habitats for Oregon Coast Coho, as well as acquisition of important coho habitat linked to the Nehalem estuary to allow long-term protection and restoration of habitat for juvenile coho. They are applying under the coho habitat populations priority. The applicant is the Upper Nehalem Watershed Council. This is within OWEB's Region 1, the North Coast geography. In this application ranked 5 out of 5 with a request of just over $10.6 million over the 6 years of the FIP. And with that, I will hand it back to Eric Williams.
Thank you, Jillian. Couple of notes on structure, and then I'll describe what's going on in this graph for you. Because we do have some board members who weren't here the last time we awarded FIPs, I just wanted to remind the board that this is structured differently than other OWEB grants. While it looks like, it may appear to be a block grant of a large sum of funds, it is not a block grant. We're actually prohibited by our Constitution and statutes from granting funds to another organization to then in turn grant out. And so these funds get spent down through individual grant applications, project level grant applications, just like we get in open solicitation and other programs. And this is the reason that we have some pretty substantive partnership criteria in the evaluation criteria for becoming a FIP. It is up to the partnerships to select projects. That is a huge difference from the way that things operate in terms of whether or not a project is going to be recommended. The partnership recommends all of the projects each biennium. We do thorough technical review, just like with every other grant program, but it's more around looking at the application revisions on those projects to get them into shape that we feel fully meets our criteria. So just wanted to point out that key difference in how this operates. And while you saw on those slides a single applicant for each of these partnerships, they're the point of contact, the organization that's the point of contact for the partnership. They're all of the partners, or many of the partners that are eligible grantees that were mentioned by my colleagues here that are members of each partnership will be receiving project level grants to implement the projects that are prioritized in their strategic action plan. So just wanted to make sure that that was clear before we move forward. So what's happening on this slide? This is our funding graph, our historical funding graph, with also a look towards the future in the context of our spending plan. Historically, as the board developed the FIP program, and the board initially expressed a preference for about 25% of the spending plan for our core programs on FIP, with some comfort level increasing that to 30% over time. And so those two lines shown on the graph there, they represent 25% of the spending plan and 30%. Last time we showed this graph to the committee, it was a little bit confusing because those appeared as horizontal lines, as if that number was static over time. And so we've addressed that error in the graph to show how the spending plan has changed over time. And so that those percentages are actual percentages for each biennium shown on the graph. Now to the colors on the bars, each cohort of FIPs has a different color. Cohort 1, the first FIPs were awarded in 2015. Those are represented by the purple sections of the bar graph. And you'll notice that we took a biennium off in 17-19, the second biennium there, because the first biennium of FIPs were awarded pretty deep into the biennium. And so that's why you see a gap there. So then you see the second cohort coming on in the 1921 biennium and then carrying through the 3 bienniums of funding. The third cohort was awarded in 2021, represented in blue. And then the recommendation for the fourth cohort that's before you today is represented in yellow. And we wanted to project this out to show the commitment that will be made of funds by recommending these projects today, because they're not proposing even spending of funds over the biennia. The proposed funds spent for the recommended FIPs actually increase in the second and third year bienniums. And so that's why you see in 25-27, the bar graph is reaching about 30% of what the current spending plan is. Of course, we don't know what the 25-27 spending plan will be yet, but you can see how that looks in relation to where we are now. And to project into the future, we just simply carried what's currently in this biennium spending plan for new FIPs, which is $11 million, and put that into the graph for the successive cohorts 5, 6, and 7. And so hopefully that all makes sense, but maybe I should pause there to see if anyone's confused by the numbers or if there's any questions on the bar graph before we move on.
I see Jamie's hand is up.
Yeah, this is, thanks, Eric. This is actually a really helpful, it's a really great tool. But what this is suggesting to me is that funding will go down over time. Well, even if we keep that pace of 3 at any one time, there's 3 cohorts going through. And we're also hearing concerns from partners about increasing costs, et cetera. So looking at the 2027 through 9 and 2029 through 31, with those dipping, are you anticipating that the scope of projects will scale down, or what's the thinking on cutting back this percentage of OWEB's budget?
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. The reason for that appearing to go down is that we just kept the $11 million that was in the spending plan. Each time in recent history, the board has exceeded what was initially in the spending plan, but we did not want to make the leap and presume that the board would put a higher number in the spending plan. I think, depending on how lottery revenues go and how our federal grants go, that will really determine, I think, what the board ends up putting in those future spending plans. I think there's a good likelihood it'll be higher than $11 million, but I didn't want to project that at this time. So I just kept current spending plan levels in there.
Got it, thanks.
All right, any other questions or comments? I love this graph. That is it's really helpful to see it like that. All right, not hearing any questions or comments. Oh, Bruce, sorry. Bruce, please.
I really enjoy reading the evaluation criteria reviews. They're so informative, and they make it very easy to cast a vote as a board member. But I think they also serve as a great training tool for people looking at submitting FIPs in the future and how they put them together. And in keeping with that, there was a question you had a concern on the Nehalem project about the lack of previous OWEB grants that had been awarded to members of that partnership, and somehow that seemed like a negative, it was a negative, a concern. So are we saying, this implies, but are we saying that if you're looking at doing a FIP and putting together partners, you need to have partners who have been successful at obtaining OWEB funding in the past? It gives you a significant step up. And if we are, I mean, that's a pretty major heads up to people looking for FIPs.
Thanks for the question, Bruce. I'll start and then see if my colleagues want to join in. That, again, goes back to the partnership criteria that are emphasized in the rules and the reason for it. Because we are outsourcing project selection, it's fairly critical that the partnership has a good understanding of how OWEB's grant programs work. It doesn't mean that every partner has to be an experienced grantee. It's certainly not. There can be organizations that are parts of partnerships that receive funds that maybe don't have a lot of experience. But what the evaluation criteria looking for is the partnership's track record and history in successfully implementing restoration programs. Anything to add to that from the group? No? Okay.
Mark, you have your hand up?
Yes. Are we going to have public comment on this one, Barbara, or are we just going right into questions and comments?
We have nobody signed up for public comment on this. So we're
Okay.
So questions, yes.
Ready for deliberation. So
no,
Derek,
we're going to take a break. We're going to take a break before deliberations.
Okay. So. I will wait till after the break.
Oh, okay. You don't have a question?
Just comments. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are ahead of schedule. And I know some people would like to check out of their room. So we're going to take a 20-minute break. We'll see you back here at 9:50, please. Thank you. Regan? Can everybody find their way back to their seats, please? Welcome back, everybody. So we are on agenda M and M2, I guess we could call it, where we are going to be doing some deliberation. Is everybody on screen? Everybody?
Mark.
Just him?
Oh, here's Kelly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so now is the,
Almost two hands from Stephen.
he didn't hear you.
He doesn't need to hear.
All right, so this is the time of our FIP Awards where we do some deliberations. So does anybody have questions, comments? I know Mark Labhart does, so we will start with you, please.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay, Barbara? Got my microphone
Yeah,
right?
you're great, thanks.
Good. So I'd like to start off by recognizing the work that staff has put into this FIP projects. They were a little bit shy in telling the background that went into these projects, so I want to give a lot of kudos to staff. There's a lot of work that's done behind the scenes with the review groups, the various agencies that have reviewed these projects, their due diligence in working with the various FIP applicants in developing these projects. So a huge amount of kudos goes to staff and the various agencies that participated in the review process. So then this was set up to come to the grants committee, which a number of us on this board serve on the grants committee. And it was done a little bit differently this time. We spent the better part of a day in Salem interviewing the FIP applicants, all 5 of them. Each of us was given a lead in one project to do a deep dive into that. And we were asked questions, and we had the applicants come before us at the meeting, and we asked questions of them. Staff had provided some background information in terms of the due diligence, the strengths of the projects, the weaknesses of the projects. And so then we were given an opportunity to ask questions of the applicants themselves. So we on the grants committee also did a deep dive into the various applications. And so the applications that were moved forward by unanimous vote of the grants committee, I think were had a significant amount of work that were done in there. I want to go on record in strong support of the recommendation, the unanimous recommendation from the grants committee for the FIP projects that are recommended for funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. It almost sounded like a motion, but we're not there yet. Lindsay.
Thank you. For the record, Lindsay McClary. Thanks, Mark Labhart, for setting that kind of scene and how some of the OWEB board members here today have seen these applications come through. And yeah, just want to kind of echo some of Mark's comments that it takes a lot to put a FIP application together, and it takes a lot of years to get a strategic action plan and all of the partnerships. And we had a great opportunity yesterday in the field to see the fruits of some of the FIPs in the past. And I really feel strongly that this funding opportunity is so important to move the needle at a landscape scale for the work that OWEB wants to do on the ground and is supportive of doing on the ground. And so I'm really excited to have the opportunity to vote and weigh in and move some of these projects forward, and hope the FIP program continues, because I really do feel like that's where we get a lot of the results on the ground. Is it takes that amount of time. It takes 6 or more years to kind of develop those relationships and to make the needle move. So thank you.
Bruce.
I would dearly love to support the Nehalem FIP project. It's an area that I know, I love, and they're great people. But that said, the analysis that was presented and given to the board on the 5 projects or FIP applications is compelling. I was heartened to find that there is still a significant amount of money left for the Nehalem group on partnership development. So yes, they don't get it this time, but they've got money to keep developing their partnership and to work on areas. So I hope to see them back before I'm off the board, so I can vote yes on it. But that said, when it's time to vote, I appreciate and support what you've done.
All right, Mark Webb and then Liza Jane.
Would y'all just explain to me how the reviewers are confident that the treatments proposed will be effective, just for clarification?
I'll start and then ask my colleagues to chime in. I mentioned the results chain earlier, which is a key component of the strategic action plan that basically maps out the proposed restoration actions to what that's going to mean in terms of outputs on the ground, to how that gets to ecological outcomes. And so each partnership has one of those in their strategic action plan. The FIP application includes a detailed work plan for the first biennium. We don't ask people for an awful lot of detail for bienniums 2 and 3 because it's so far out. But if they are funded, they come back to you with the proposed work plan for the upcoming biennium and give you a status update so you have a chance to see what's been going on. Are they progressing enough to warrant their next biennium of investment? Because we are limited to awarding the funds that we currently have in our biennium spending plan. We can't award funds beyond that we don't have in hand yet. So we've got that built into the process to come back to you. And Audrey leads an effort of tracking progress that you will see in an organized way with each FIP that's been funded, where they are in terms of what they had proposed to achieve for outcomes and where things stand with each report that you get from the board. Audrey, is there anything that you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the question, board member. For the record, Audrey Hatch, Conservation Outcomes Coordinator. And I would add just 2 things. Along with that progress tracking report process, each biennium, the board will see a report from each funded initiative. And a couple components of that are, I think, really good to keep in mind related to your question. So the work happens in collaboration with OWEB staff with each funded partnership to identify what to measure on each biennium, and that's done consistently. So the same information and metrics are reported each biennium that can help to inform those work plan conversations. And then another component of those progress tracking reports, kind of in addition to the quantitative piece, is some deliberate and consistent thinking qualitatively around adaptive management. So what has the partnership learned? Have they needed to make a change? And they're asked to really think through restoration effectiveness as well as adaptive management of the partnership functioning as well. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Liza Jane, thank you.
Good morning. I just wanted to say that I support the FIP so much, and I've been maybe a slower fan, but what I see on the ground, this brings a team together, and we keep hearing about capacity, and one way to address that is bring on more crew to get the work done, and you get this diverse set of skills and experiences that can come together and really make a difference on a landscape. So just I was able to be on the grants committee and look at these and have huge appreciation for the people that are in the FIP doing the work, then our staff, and then being able to get out and see it happening, it's tremendous. So I just wanted to be able to express my appreciation and full enthusiasm for support of this.
All right. Not seeing any more questions or comments, I would like to call for a motion, please.
I would make it, but I don't have anything to read.
You don't have a microphone either.
Lindsay.
Oh, there we go. Go ahead, Lindsay.
I have it here. I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move the board award a total of $9,448,863 to the top 4 ranked applications listed in attachment B and delegate authority to the executive director to award project level grants to these partnerships for the 2023-2025 biennium with an award date of April 24th, 2024.
I second that.
All right, it's been moved by Meg, seconded by Lindsay. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. All right, motion passes unanimously.
And a huge thank you to all 5 partnership applicants for the work they put into it, and as well as our technical reviewers. Much appreciation for that. And now the work begins.
Yes, thank you. All right, so we are a little bit ahead of schedule. So Liza, Jane, and I have decided to move some things up on the agenda. And we are going to go to other business. We're gonna just go there, and I'm gonna pass. All right? Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna cue this up for Stephanie, please.
All right. So I want to preview the July meeting a little bit for the board, and as a part of that, talk about next steps and where we go from here regarding the acquisition project that the board considered yesterday. And I would like Renee to come up to the table, please, just in case questions come up that I might need her help on. So one thing that we visited about, and this had been on our docket for this year anyway, was to have a land acquisition grants 101. We had thought about having that in October, but we've had a time slot open up in July in our planning, and then given the timing of the consideration of the application, we thought it would be helpful to give an overview of the land acquisition program. And I think related to that, several folks have asked kind of if the board did want to take up this issue or this application again, how could that work? My recommendation to the board is that we have the training in July, that the board takes the few months between now and July to consider the feedback that you heard this morning, and think about providing guidance to the applicant to resubmit. That is an option that the board has available to you. And think about how might we direct the applicant in a resubmission. So those are some things that I'll suggest to the board to consider. And Renee, anything you would like to add to that?
Good morning, co-chairs, members of the board. For the record, Renee Davis, Acquisitions and Special Programs Manager. I think in terms of the training, we already were thinking about a Land Acquisition 101. I do think it is valuable to have Department of Justice contact counsel in attendance. I know Diane Lloyd was very helpful in some of that foundation setting. I think just the nature of permanent investments warrants her presence. And I do think just regrounding in some of those constitutional expectations, balancing that with some of the emerging discussions related to strategic plan that you've all have had around urban and working lands as an example. But I think regrounding in core, and then to Stephanie's point, in statute, when there is a no vote, the board has the ability to reject the proposal and direct the applicant to revise the proposal to comply with the requirements of the Watershed Conservation Grant Fund. So that is already built into our application, and resubmit the proposal. So there is space with a no vote to do that if that is the board's inclination.
Actually, this is yours. Okay. Jamie.
Yeah, no, really appreciate that, especially since I think some concerns were flagged that decisions may have been made not based on criteria, existing criteria. So I think that reminder and that training will be very helpful. The concern that I think I've heard flagged and concern I have is that part of the purchase of this property may have been, and the dependency on actually being able to pay for it may be contingent on the consideration of, OWEB funding to help actually pay for the land. So I guess my question is, given that they may, well, obviously they have met the criteria because staff recommended for approval. If instead of just at our July meeting, kicking the can down the road further, if after that training, we could essentially have the application considered at that time. Because if the recommendation at that point is just to reapply, and they've already met the criteria because it received staff recommendation, that seems to just unnecessarily extend the time for consideration, but also for the time that they may be eligible to get OWEB funding, especially if their ability to complete the purchase. I understand that process has begun, but to actually fully purchase and fund the land may be put in jeopardy. So I'm concerned about the timing of extending it too far. So I wanted to see if after that, for the July meeting, after the training, if we could just reconsider the project at that time.
Thanks for the question, Jamie. I think based on the statutory language that I just read for the board, if the board determines today to provide direction to the applicant to resubmit following the no vote yesterday, then if the board is so inclined in July to revisit the vote, that could occur because we would have a revised application based on the deliberation that led to the no vote yesterday.
If I could respond, Jamie and Renee, we don't have an action item on this issue on our other items. So we're not able to take action on something that's not on our agenda currently. That's my understanding.
I think the question, one question is, in reading the statute, I'm not clear that it takes a vote to provide that direction. I think the the board could provide, just verbally provide guidance to the applicant if you were so inclined.
This is like deliberation. Yeah. Meg.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just putting aside for the moment the timing of the resubmittal, and my concern is for the board. We make criteria, applicants know what it is, and they try to meet it. And I feel like we kind of had a de facto criteria added yesterday, and I would want to have a conversation and some decision-making by the full board about, is this a new criteria for land acquisitions? And I'd like to see it on the agenda in July, because I think it's an important decision-making process. I don't know, I also would like to see this applicant be able to come back and make their pitch again, but they need to know what criteria their application is going to be evaluated under, and that's my concern. So maybe we can
Mark?
You didn't see that, Barbara. So I would appreciate the 101 to start with, because I feel like I was asking questions that are important to me or to people I work with that may not be relevant here. And then I just place that in the context as a former county judge, where as judge, I make decisions given the sort of legal constraints and other things that I probably wouldn't have made as an individual. So it would help me to know what those sideboards are in that decision space. And given the role I might have played in the decision yesterday, it would be nice, I think, if we can informally just invite them back. I mean, if it takes a formal motion, I don't know what to do, but it's hard to see why that would be the case. And yeah, so I'd like to see 101, and I'd like to see us to be able to reconsider it based or post 101. We can see if we pass the class.
Thank you. And Jamie, your hand's still up?
Yeah, I was responding to, if it's something that does need a motion, I think we can move to change and revise the agenda to put that in place. But per Stephanie's comment, if we don't need it, to make that referral, to ask that. But to Meg's point, it sounds like if there's a desire to change criteria, that we would need to, I assume we would need to go through rulemaking to make that happen. And so it sounds like we're making a change midstream. And so I think an update on existing rules for this existing applicant and not changing rules midstream, and then reconsidering the project at our July meeting based on existing rules is one piece. And if there is a desire to add additional criteria, then I see that as a separate process. I think we often receive feedback on making sure that we're evaluating a project based on existing criteria. So so I would, if there's the chair's desire or motion, I'm happy to make a motion that we add that to our agenda so we can take action. If we can just make the referral, then I ask that we make that referral, but also that we not change rules midstream, and make sure that when we get the primer and then are able to reconsider this project, that is based on existing criteria.
Okay, Mark, you have a comment?
Yes, I'm going to support Mark's comments, and I think Meg's comments too. I think the compromise here might be, let's just give direction that we want an agenda item for 101 acquisitions, and have council there and just review what the statute says and make sure that we are in compliance with the statute. And then at that point in time, I guess the compromise would be is the board can make a decision on whether to revisit or not a decision that we've made previously. So just a thought.
Any other comments? Meg?
Just one more following Mark's and Jamie's comments. We could do what people have suggested, do the 101, talk about whether we want to change the criteria or not, and have, if it's the board's desire to do this, have the application there without changes, without DLT doing anything else, bringing it back and letting the board, having been kind of re-educated about the criteria, make a decision. And then if the decision under the existing criteria is still to reject the application, then I mean, it would be, I'm not sure how we would get there under the existing criteria, but anyway, I think that's a process we could use. And if board members feel like the criteria is lacking something important, then we'd be talking about going forward, I think, whether we want to change the rules.
May I ask a question at some point?
Of course, Renee.
Thank you. I think to Meg's point, we are slated to open our next land acquisition grant solicitation in early June. A question to this body is, are we clear enough on criteria to do that? Because from, I think, both Miriam's and my standpoint, we do not want to be non-transparent or unclear with applicants in our rules, in the guidance material that we have. And I based on yesterday's decision, I don't know that our materials reflect where that conversation landed. And I don't feel comfortable opening a solicitation until we're clear on that. I think it's unfair to applicants, and this board has spent a lot of time recently talking about transparency and are we helping folks to aim at the right targets? And I don't know what the right target is currently for land acquisitions.
Bruce.
Yeah, I don't think we can overestimate the impact of what happened yesterday. I had trouble sleeping last night, and even though I made a little snarky comment about the action after the Paulina vote on the extension of the time, I was serious. We had rejected an acquisition, and then the very next vote, we extended a time limit for a piece of property that was more accurately agricultural land than the one we just rejected. That was inconsistent. We definitely have to have the 101. I asked the question to myself, well, if all the criteria, if staff does all the work and all the criteria are met, what is really the role of a board member? Are we just there to rubber stamp the recommendation? And we are not. There are lots of opportunities for us to say, in the competitive arena of our grants, to say, we believe, different than the staff, that this particular applicant has better met the criteria that have been established, A over B. We have that subjective and our own thinking. We can say, you think they have met the criteria? I don't think they have met the criteria. I'm going to vote no. The philosophical issues that sometimes have to be left at the door as a board member, you always have the opportunity to say, I want to change the criteria. There are people, Oregonians, who believe that with the federal government owning 53% of the land mass of Oregon, with Division of State Lands having 800,000 acres, that's quite enough, thank you. And we really don't need to be taking any more and putting it into the public domain. Those are discussions that can be held and that board members can present to say, we would like to change criteria. What we did yesterday was well-meaning and as I've said a number of times, taking active land, agricultural land out of production. You have to have a good reason, and there has to be an opportunity if it's adequate or if it has the ability to stay in an agricultural use. Have we done everything possible to allow that to happen before we start talking about acquisition? This one, to my estimation, was clearly done that way. There was a comment that 2 years on the market was not enough. I disagree with that particular piece of property. I think 2 years was certainly adequate, where it is, what it is, how it was advertised. That said, I'm 101. The idea that I feel we as a board need to have a full discussion about the criteria and give the Deschutes Land Trust another shot at this. I don't know how my esteemed colleagues will end up voting on it, but I think we need to know what criteria we're using to vote, whether it is appropriate. And so if we're going to do something in July, I think we have to have whatever is necessary to assure that a vote will take place. I would like to figure out how to do that.
Stephanie?
I
Barbara,
did just
then Mark.
I did just want to flag, this has been a pretty rapidly evolving situation and discussion, and I want to note, we may want to do some legal research, and then we may need to reach out, back out to the board. So I just wanted to put that little caveat in there, just so everybody's aware.
Barbara?
So just a thought for July, understanding Jamie's comment about timeline for this application. Could we use the application as our blueprint for the training?
Potentially, I would need to think through that.
I don't know what that looks like either, but I just got to thinking that maybe that would be our blueprint as we.
I would suggest one that's already been awarded or not, rather than one that's, just given some experience we've had with the federal government around other, I would hesitate to do it there personally.
Mark, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up with what Bruce was saying. I always have sort of a visceral reaction to taking ag ground out of production, just put that in scare quotes. Eastern Oregon, that's even more than 50 whatever percent it was, that's federally owned or state and federally owned and managed. And that does have an impact to the local tax base, the socioeconomic opportunities and the like. But as I was thinking about this last night, I am assuming, perhaps incorrectly, that just about every piece that comes before us for this kind of acquisition is going to be ag ground. And so if we just base it on being ag ground, the program's over. That's my concern. So I would really like to revisit it again. I'd like to know what kind of discretion I as a board member have in terms of sort of the interest I bring to the table vis-a-vis the criteria that are in statute and stuff. So it would really help, and I just think it's fair to reconsider it.
Meg?
Thank you, Nancy Jane. I agree with actually both you guys, Mark's and Bruce's comments. To your question, Renee, what I'd like to see us do is reground ourselves in the existing criteria and take up this application. And then if from the conversation, it's decided that the board thinks there's something missing in the criteria, that means a rulemaking. And I would not support stopping the land acquisition program for that to happen, because that'll take a while. And we have criteria now, and I think we should process the applications on the schedule and under the criteria. And then if it gets changed, then the new applications coming in would be subject to that criteria.
Lindsay, and then Dan.
Thank you. Yeah, lots of good conversation here. I would really like to see the application come back in front of the board for a vote as soon as possible. I support the 101. I really liked Mark Webb's comment about, most acquisitions that come in are probably going to have some level of ag history here. And I think looking at it with the criteria is important. I just want to flag, being on the board and also being a practitioner, I have heard from inside OWEB staff conversations that, we have money designated in an acquisition program, land and water, and, why is it being underutilized? Why are folks not going through the application process? How can we bolster that with the caveat that there are other acquisition programs existing outside of OWEB? I hear conversations on the practitioner side outside of OWEB saying, gosh, there are a lot of hurdles, we can't seem to use this program, there's this or that, and it's really difficult, and we'd like to use it. Let's break down some of these barriers. And so both parties really want to see acquisition happen. And we are now in a spot where it seems like it met the criteria, it had a lot of support, it had, tribal, probably little c consultation happen in conversations. I think in all intents and purposes, we all want the same thing, and I would really caution us for pumping the brakes. I totally understand your question and comment, Renee, about not feeling comfortable opening it up in June. But I guess what I'm kind of hearing is, let's take another look. Let's look at what the criteria is. let's evaluate some opinions and some thought processes, let's regroup and recalibrate, but we have a program with designated money with a lot of work on the ground happening to get to this point. Thank you.
Dan?
Yeah, I am, for the record, Dan Brown with EPA, and I am not a voting member. Excuse me a minute, I gotta collect my thoughts here. Two comments. One is, I hear what Renee is saying, and it's incredibly important. I am involved in source water protection. We have communities in Oregon whose drinking water is impacted by working lands. They're struggling. They're, in many cases, rural communities, in many cases, disadvantaged communities. And they're trying to purchase their land from working landowners unwillingly, ready to sell in order to protect their drinking water. So that, in my opinion, doesn't take lands out of being working. It just changes what they're working for. Our lands in Oregon are working all the time. In many cases, they're working to raise the food we eat. In many cases, they're working to provide our drinking water. They're always working. We saw great examples yesterday where some farmers, thankfully, took incredible risks to take a piece of land that wasn't working anymore, and they were willing to invest their resources. We heard one in the room say that he was a little crazy. He probably extended his risk tolerance more than he was even comfortable to. But there's not going to be people like that all the time. And our land conservancy partners, that's when they need to step in and acquire those lands that really aren't working for anybody anymore. They're not working for the ag community, they're not working for people, they're not working for our plants and animals. And related to the upcoming solicitation, because I gave that background in source water protection because I've had conversations with Colt, and they have also struggled with this program and have had some very hard conversations with OWEB staff. And this Land Acquisition 101 was coming up on the agenda anyways, because of some of those complicating things. And it's, you know, what's the magic of OWEB is the partnerships and the trust we build with our partners to get this important work done. And changing rules is, you know, I'm non-voting, but as somebody who has been a public servant my entire life, it's wrong, it's bad governance, in my opinion, and I really think you're in a very uncomfortable position because you've been working very hard to build this trust. We have rules of the road, and it's just not good governance to sort of not be able to tell your partners how to interpret those rules for the important work they're doing. And so I'm kind of rambling, but these are my feelings. I'm a little emotional about it, obviously, but I'll shut up.
Thank you, Dan. Bruce?
Thank you, Dan. Well said. And 3 of the 4 no votes yesterday are present now. And I think it's only fair to ask them if they're comfortable with looking at this in July, if not feeling like their vote is being ignored, but that they made it. Is there are they comfortable with the information that we hope to receive in the 101 and the possibility of being asked to look at the vote again? I just want to be considerate of those 3 votes. And the same with Liz, although she's in here.
Thank you. Mark and then Gary.
Okay, thank you. I'm go back to Renee's request, whether she should move ahead. Clearly, Renee, in my opinion, you should move ahead. We have legislative direction in form of a statute that gives clear direction. The statute is codified in administrative rule with criteria. There should be no attempt to modify the statute or the administrative rule at this point in time, and that is what is in effect in law. And you should move ahead in June with an application, because I have no intent of trying to modify a statute or an administrative rule that gave us legislative direction on this program.
Thank you. Gary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I really like this discussion. I know there's a lot of people in the room and outside of the on Zoom thinks that we just really messed up and did the wrong thing yesterday. I don't agree. I think that what it did was bring on a conversation here that the board really is going to be, in the end, very valuable. And to me, you know, being watching conflicts occur over the years and things, this is really how collaboration works, is when you can, when people that otherwise wouldn't say anything or share their feelings or thoughts or what's important to them, step up and you know, give everybody else their little piece of wisdom of why they feel the way they do. And so what it does is it brings us eventually, it's messy and it's can be really problematic and it's slow. We didn't make this decision yesterday, you know, in time, maybe that what others would have liked to have it, but I think the right decision is eventually, you know, arrived at. And for a thought that I had, you know, that I just want to make sure that we're not, you know, ag land is really important, but is this particular way of protecting lands line up with our other ways of protecting land? We have this Oregon Ag Heritage Program that's you know, directed at you know, that specifically and in keeping those ag lands intact. And I just want to make sure that we consider that there's other ways, maybe other creative ways to protect lands in addition to just outright acquisitions. And so if the objective of this particular parcel is to make sure that it is, you know, it performs the best over time, then, you know, we can consider those too. So anyway, I think that this is a great discussion, and I really appreciate everybody chiming in on it. Thank you, including the people that added public comment this morning.
Thank you, Gary. Any other thoughts, comments, conclusions? Stephanie?
I just wanted to express appreciation for Gary's comments and express appreciation for Gary being here. Gary was here to help us with quorum requirements to make sure Gary's term, as you know, Gary's term ended, and want to thank him for being willing to join us. I also just wanted to say, first of all, I'm disappointed about the outcome with the project, but I have tremendous respect for the conservation ethic of the people who voted against it. And I've seen what they've put in place on their own land, including taking ground out of production for fish and wildlife habitat. So I just wanted to recognize that.
Barbara?
Just Just my final comment is I really appreciate all your professionalism during this, your manner, your professional manner, and providing a safe space for all of us to have this conversation. So I really admire all of you for providing that.
All right, I'm not sure. We're in other business.
Madam Co-Chair, oh, sorry, go ahead. I can keep previewing the July meeting if you'd like, or.
You have more? Go ahead.
Sure. Just wanted to note that in addition to the land acquisition 101 and so forth, we are going to be in the Eugene Springfield area. So our staff are working on some great tours there. So that's another thing that we have teed up for you. So in addition, water acquisition grant awards in July. So several additional grant making will be coming up. So just wanted to note, and then strategic plan adoption, potentially, if you've got a director confirmed by then, as well as the DEI resolution and
Rulemaking, board approval of small grant. and water source protection administrative rules.
Yep, so just wanted to preview that again, if, I'm gonna continue Lisa's tradition of asking folks to submit to me after the meeting, 3 things that went well and three things that we could improve on for the next time around. So thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Back to you.
Meg, your face tells me you have something to
No,
say.
I was like, I wanted to get clarity on where we landed, basically, and what's going to, with respect to this item we've been talking about, what we'll do in July.
All right. What I heard from everyone, I also really appreciate. And Gary, yes, this is how we come to good decisions, is that we have, we learn more. We have a training in July. Renee, I heard strong support for you to continue with the June date for accepting opening for proposals in acquisition, and that that I believe the board can, I just don't know, can we, without a vote, how would we ask the Deschutes Land Trust to resubmit? I don't know that we can do that, but they're hearing this conversation clearly, so.
Yeah, and we'll do some legal research after this conversation, and we'll just share an update with the board regarding what we're able to do and then what the board's options are in July.
Yeah, and just, I always think about setting precedent, even though I'm not an attorney, but I know it can jump up on you. So please keep that in mind as we move forward. So.
Just one.
Of course, Meg.
Can we give the sense of the board that if we're able to have Deschutes come back in July, that is what we'd like to see happen? I mean, after the legal research that you're gonna do, is that?
Straw poll.
I'll ask about that,
Because otherwise, I'm afraid we're gonna have to have another meeting in order to decide what we're gonna do at the July meeting.
Okay.
Dan and then Jamie.
Just operationally, does the board have the opportunity to have a special purpose meeting, like a very limited duration in the interim to come to?
There is that, that is something the board could do. Mm-hmm.
Jamie.
Similar to Meg, my concern is, Stephanie, I appreciate your wanting to get additional confirmation and legal advice, but if we don't positively affirm either through giving a sense of the board, a sense of the majority of the board about bringing it back potentially for reconsideration at next meeting, or even taking a step to special orbits to change the agenda, to add it to the agenda, and then actually vote on bringing it back. If we don't take those steps today, the research that you may come up with was, well, you could have done it at the meeting, but now you can't do it, so you have to wait till the next meeting. So given the strong feeling, I think we're hearing from across the board and from staff, frankly, for some clarity, I think the consistent messaging is, yes, getting some additional training and understanding the existing rules and requirements. And two is the opportunity to reconsider this project. And so if there is any doubt, then I feel very strongly that we should proactively provide that direction. If that direction is provided and legal counsel comes back and said there's some issue or flag, then that is direction to make changes to the direction that the board gives, and to potentially even not consider or have a different agenda in July. But my concern is that if there is not either formal direction or a sense of the board provided today, that a rationale could be given to actually not include it on the July meeting. And I think what I've heard from the majority of members, both those who are feel it should move forward, those who have not felt it should go forward, but are welcoming additional understanding of the criteria, that we at least get the opportunity to reconsider the project. So if there's any doubt in your mind that you could potentially add to the agenda, I ask that we be given the opportunity to take action now as a board, so that it does come before us, and we don't hear later, an email a week from now saying, well, shucks, if we would have only had that discussion or gotten the sense of the board, we could do it, but otherwise we can't. So I just ask that we provide a sense of the board to provide that opportunity to bring it back in July.
So Jamie, this is Barbara. When we build the agenda, this conversation will be part of our agenda building, depending on the legal answer. That's kind of where I feel like, we're hearing you. And when we build the agenda, after we hear from legal, we would most likely put it on there, is what I hear. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Stephanie, and then Mark.
I'll just add, if there is a need to call a special board meeting in order to effectuate it in motion for July, then we can do that, if pending our legal research.
Mark?
Yeah, I don't know all the formalities. I was just going to move that we reconsider DLT unless. You can't? Why not?
Because we're in our agenda, we're in other business, and it's not a decision-making portion of our agenda. It's not. And I don't, we're talking about decisions, and we're getting sense of the board, but we're not having a motion. And I think that this can move relatively quickly. I'm assuming that DOJ can give us guidance quickly, and it is Wednesday in the US right now. So I don't think this is going to be a delay till July, till some information can be given to Deschutes Land Trust, and we'll do it correctly instead of asking for forgiveness after we screw up. So if there was a significant delay, I would totally support that. I don't think there will be. We have an option of a special meeting if need be. So that's where we are, in my understanding.
So we're way ahead. Yeah. And what's going on with lunches?
They won't be until lunch. Yeah, I know.
Should we take a break?
That's just a clever name.
Sure. Can we take a 10-minute break? That sound all right to everybody? Okay.
Then we'll come back and do another agenda item.
Yes.
Even though it's after lunch. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
10-minute break.
10-minute break. All right, thank you.
Yeah, and that'll time out, right, for the amount that we have.
Okay, everybody, come on back. Ready to resume? Give people just a couple minutes, a minute. Tick tock. We're at agenda item N today, just bumped that up. We'll have lunch afterwards, but this is agenda item N. It's on ebook page 566, and I'll turn this over to Stephanie.
All right, good morning again, board members. I'm really pleased to introduce this morning our budget and legislative team at OWEB, Miriam Scherer and Eric Hartstein. Miriam's our business operations manager and fiscal officer, and Eric is our senior policy coordinator. We are sharing our draft new budget requests for the 2025-2027 biennium at the same time of year that we would normally share them with you. But I wanted to let you know, and you heard a little bit of this over the last couple days, that a lot of things in the background are very different with this budgeting cycle than previous times that we've presented to you. The most important thing to know is that we are shortening our lists of new funding requests much earlier in the process this time. So you will notice as Eric and Miriam go through our POPs that our list is much shorter, and that's a result of limited funding available, as well as the process and the instructions to agencies being different this time around. So you're going to see, again, what you see today is going to be even shorter than what you saw on the staff report that is posted. We have received some additional direction since we posted that staff report. We've shortened our list accordingly, and we'll explain a little bit more about that. And we may get further direction between now and July. And so the list that comes before you in July might be even shorter than what you see today. And so just wanted to note that the governor's office has been working with agencies much closer earlier in the process. And one of the goals of that is to avoid agencies doing a bunch of work on proposals when there is not going to be funding available to support everything that we all would ideally like to have on our list. So there is a desire to have that earlier coordination with the governor's office and a more efficient process. So with that, I will pass the baton to Miriam and Eric.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. For the record, Eric Hartstein, Senior Policy Coordinator. And I'll start this by providing a little bit of an overview of some key terms that you will hear today and really throughout the development of the agency request budget process. First is a policy option packages, or POPs. So these are proposals that agencies put forward that include funding for new program investments. And this includes existing staffing positions that are limited duration. The next is current service level, or CSL. These are permanent positions along with the services and supplies and an inflationary calculation that are automatically included in agency budgets. And then legislative concepts, or LCs, you may hear them referred to as. So these are proposals that agencies put forward to change statute and can range from really kind of minor technical changes to full-blown development of new programs. So LCs can have accompanying POPs and must be submitted and approved by the Department of Administrative Services and the governor's office before moving forward. And at this time, OWEB does not anticipate that we will have any legislative concepts for the 2025-2027 biennium. And with that, I'll pass it over to you, Miriam.
All right, good morning. For the record, Miriam Scher, Fiscal Officer and Business Operations Manager at OWEB. So this is a very busy slide, but it does kind of detail some of the background. So where we are as we approach the budgeting process. Stephanie gave a great introduction as to the current budget climate and the direction that we're receiving from Department of Administrative Services, or DAS, and the governor's office a lot earlier in the process. You can see on the left side of the screen some of those listed out the changes in the process. We started with submitting some information early in January, those with a list of sort of this is where we think that we want to go, and have received further guidance as far as budget availability and how to move forward with that. In fact, I think Stephanie noted the last 2 pages of your tome board book, I'll say, or board tome, really has a chart that you can refer to, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And that has changed. Our presentation today is different than what we submitted for publication earlier in the month. So as you can see here, we have some state budget priorities: the housing, behavioral health, early education, enhanced customer service, and then some additional key issues that may be included, such as wildfire recovery and resilience. Those are all things that are working as far as looking at priorities for the state and for the budget, and looking at available resources. So the good news is that we don't anticipate at this time any significant cuts within the state, or at least within OWEB. We are statutorily required to submit a 10% cut list for all funding sources. So we will do that as at our biennial exercise that we're required to do, but we are not anticipating any significant cuts at this point. So for 25-27, looking forward, the general fund revenues and projected expenditures and the commitments are relatively balanced. We were, and I think noted yesterday, we were incredibly pleased and thankful that we have been given an opportunity to request a small amount of general fund, just around $408,000. So that was something that was a little bit of a, we'll call a windfall for the agency, giving that direction early on. For lottery funds, OWEB will be building our agency budget with the new fund split of 70% grants and 30% ops. That is different from our past 65-35 split that you may have heard about. It does give us more grant funding, so that's great for getting funds out on the ground to do the work that we are so committed to, but it does restrict our ops funds. And again, that 30% is a reduction for the statewide use of those funds and is also shared between 5 state agencies. So it's not that that full 30% just goes to OWEB. So as you can see, based on the general fund as well as that shift in the lottery funds, there's very little room for significant investments. And those positions that we do request should support existing grant programs and the work that we currently do. All right, so here on this slide, we're sharing the goals as we moved forward in creating our draft POP list. And we are looking at how to prioritize that small allocation of general fund sources, but it does mean that we're limited in what we can ask for as far as general fund investments. For example, and I think we talked about it yesterday, we're not going to be able to submit a request for OHP additional grant funding, just because we have that very stringent limitation on our abilities to request funds. Our agency priorities continue to include continued staffing to administer our programs and build capacity within our agency. If we're going to support resiliency in the state, we need to be resilient as an agency, and that really means permanent positions. We have about 1/3 of our positions in current biennium are limited duration, so we really need to continue to move forward that story and get some of those positions made permanent. We're not going to get all the way there in 25-27, but we're going to continue to step forward with that. So you'll notice in your board book that 2-pager that we have, the last 2 pages of your book does have our POPs listed. Again, we'll talk about how it's different now than when we published, but you'll see some things that look different than past versions, and that is some columns with some X's in those. And what those X's represent are the governor's office has asked us to sort our POPs according to these categories, and those are listed on the slide here in front of you. Many of our POPs check multiple of those categories, and so we've tried with some really fancy X's and double X's to illustrate, but also emphasize which category the POP connects with most strongly. All right, so this is a slide that shows us sort of the 3 significant stages of the budget process. We're currently working on the agency request budget. That is due by September 1st, so generally by the end of August, we have submitted that. The budget document itself can range and be probably around the same page numbers as your board book this biennium or this meeting. What it really is an extended essay that provides background to readers on the agency programs, our structure, and makes a case for what we're asking for, as well as lots of financial information, lots more detail about our POPs, as well as lots of reports. So once we submit our ARB to the Department of Administrative Services and the governor's office, they analyze those requests. Then collectively, the governor will submit her budget in December. Once the governor's budget is released, I think you've heard this before, agencies are required to support that budget throughout the legislative process. And then finally, the legislatively adopted budget is that final stage. The legislature will meet, set agency budgets during odd-numbered year-long sessions. So starting in 2025 January, kind of goes through June. The legislature can affirm the governor's budget, but they can also add or change Every session is different. We present our budget to the Ways and Means Natural Resource Subcommittee. The Ways and Means works out our budget for us, which goes forward to both chambers and then is signed by the governor. And then, as we've seen in past biennia, additional programs may be added to the agency in this process as well. So with that context and background, I'm going to hand it off to Eric to go over our draft operations pops.
Great, thank you, Miriam. So our program continuity draft pop list here is really about continuing limited duration staff positions. So for each of these, we think about which funding source or combination of funding sources that are available that make the most sense. So the options are general fund, lottery fund, other funds, and federal funds. And as Stephanie noted and has been discussed, there are constraints with at least a few of those funds. So a couple of items that I'd like to note here. With the climate and natural and working lands work, we are figuring out kind of the best way to support continuity here, knowing that we may not have enough federal resources to continue the climate coordinator position. And regarding the Tigate POP, we are having conversations with Tigate partners regarding where we go from here. OWEB will certainly continue to provide grants for Tigate projects, but in terms for what was envisioned for that coordinator or navigator role, we haven't seen a whole lot of projects coming in that are needing that help for us. So we're going to have some more discussion on the Tigate position with interested parties. So in order to build capacity at the agency, we are proposing a few things here, including reclassifications of some existing core IT infrastructure positions and a reclassification of a communications enhancement position. And we are also including an additional lottery-funded grant coordinator position to support landscape resiliency initiatives, specifically the FIP and partner organization technical assistance grant programs. And then continuing on with agency capacity, our draft POPs provide for an internal audit services, which would be added to our shared services agreement with the Water Resources Department. And this function is a statutory requirement, and we've asked for this before in partnership with WRD, but have not been successful to date. And our draft POP list also includes an asset and acquisition stewardship and compliance monitoring position. That's to coordinate the agency's responsibilities regarding stewardship and compliance monitoring of investments that involve permanent investments in land. And for the Environmental Restoration Council and programs associated with the Monsanto settlement agreement that we discussed yesterday, we will be requesting continuity of 2 limited duration positions that were provided this biennium and 3 new positions for the next biennium. 3 positions that were added for this biennium as part of the legislation, Senate Bill 1561, are permanent and will thus be included in the current service level for the agency. And with that, I will pass it back over to you, Miriam.
All right, so this is a quick overview of the grant fund resources request. The first bullet is our standard grant program spending limitation continuity. This is a routine continuity of our spending authority. And so some of those federal funds that we already have, like our PACSER funds and other funds that we already have established within the agency, we're asking for continuity for spending limitation for those. For the lottery funds, we have to phase out all of the funds that are awarded or appropriated within this biennium, and then we have to phase back in based on our latest revenue projections. So we'll be pulling that together. That final projection that we'll be using will be the May forecast. This biennium, we received guidance, or at least for the 25-27 biennium, we received guidance that we do need to build that in at 70% for grant funds. Again, different than our 35-65 in the past. And then we're including, or may include, a 14 million approximate amount for the Environmental Restoration Council, should the disproportionately impacted community fund be managed by OWEB. We would need to have that spending authority. So based on treasurer estimates, that's going to be around $14 million. So we'll be putting that in as a POP in our other funds. Again, those funds are coming from that larger settlement fund. So it's not new investments in general fund. And then we always have the added grant program limitation, and that oftentimes includes other and federal funds. So if there's new grant opportunities or cooperative agreements with federal partners, we need to make sure that we have the spending authority for those opportunities. And finally, this is just sort of a reminder and a summary page. This is a list of POPs that you see today. You didn't see dollar amounts. You'll see something a little bit more finalized when we meet in July. Again, we are required to submit our list of POPs by April 30th to DAS. They will review that and then give us further guidance. So some of those things may change once again. So in July, you'll see something hopefully with some dollar amounts, a little bit more concrete. And then you'll have a chance to review that we'll go over, and then we will need to have the board approve submission of that revised budget. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Anybody? Mark?
Why the shift from 3565 to 3070?
So in statute, it was actually written that once we exceeded 150% of lottery revenues beyond the 2011 biennium, then that needed to shift. And so last biennium, or for the current biennium, we reached that. We knew that that was going to happen. And so rather than having the guidance when we built our 23-25, we needed to sort of submit as is, and then Legislative Fiscal Office put a reserve for that 5% shift. Now we're fully in there. We know that this will happen. It's happened 2 biennia that will exceed that amount. So they're just saying, build it at this new shift.
Okay. One more?
Yes.
So I'm curious, in the last slide you had at the bottom, the agencies have to support the governor's budget. So I assume I might have known that, but didn't know. Legislators can bump them up or challenge them or whatever. What I'm curious about for folks who want to increase, say, OWEB's budget, they should be talking with you before you submit something, so that, because I assume that if somebody wants to help you, you've got the governor's budget, you can't say, no, we don't want your help anymore, we're going with the governor. Does that make sense? It seems like you would want involvement ahead of your submission to the governor's office and the governor's budget approval. Because if people wanted to help you, legislators or not, later, you can't say, thank you, we would like that. Am I reading that right? Or is that just pretty silly?
No, it's true. Once the governor's budget is released, we have to support that governor's budget.
You can't
so we
say,
can't do
okay, all right.
any further engagement.
All right.
I think our window of engagement has sort of closed at this point as to what we can solicit or what we can include because of that earlier guidance. What then would happen is advocates would work with the legislative branch to start advocating for that.
All right, yeah, thank you.
I'll just add, the process is a little different this time. Again, we submitted an initial list in late January, and then we held off on community engagement until we got some initial feedback from the governor's office, and had the green light to vet POPs, for example, with you today. And so, and just wanted to reiterate that there might be additional guidance that causes us to further whittle going forward. So, yeah. And we have had folks reach out to us and say, hey, would you consider adding this to your list? And just wanted to reiterate that due to the general fund constraints, we're not able to do that.
Meg.
I just had a clarifying question about the Monsanto Council, I'm calling it, I know that's not the name, but are we getting, did you say we got 2 or 3 permanent positions in this session and there's 3 more proposed in the next, so we'd have 6 permanent positions for that? Is that where we
So
are?
in Senate Bill 1561, we received 5 positions total. 3 of those are permanent, so those would roll in current service level. 2 of those were limited duration, and then when we put in our fiscal impact statement, we included 3 additional for the 25-27 that would, I think there's a mix in there of permanent and
Oh, I
limited
see.
duration.
So
So it would
that's
be a
lot
total of
staff.
8.
Wow, okay. Thank you.
Stephanie?
Just a couple other things, just kind of basics that, just to make sure everyone understands that any limited duration position, we do have to ask for that in every future budgeting process. So whenever a position's limited duration, if we want to continue it, we have to ask for it. One other thing, we got a great comment that made me realize it might be helpful to talk a little bit about the spending plan and just, there are some things that the board could, when the board develops its spending plan, could choose to include there. And that, because of the board's authority to approve a spending plan, there might be some things folks expected to see on our pop list that are not, because they are built into that spending plan.
I see head shaking. There, Jamie.
Thank you, and thank you for that presentation. This is a question probably more for Stephanie, and Stephanie, but the last couple of years, one of the things that's been an ongoing conversation about our budgets is making sure that we have the resources to support our team and support staff in doing the great work that they do. Is it your feeling that with what's being proposed in terms of these positions, these additional positions, are we going to be at that point of having enough support for our team to do their work, or are we still lagging behind? And I'm conscious of that because it seems that every cycle the legislature recognizes what a phenomenal job the OWEB team does and says, hey, we got this other thing we want you to do. And so wanting to just make sure that our team has the support they need to do the great work they're doing.
I'm thinking I might have further perspective for you, Jamie, in July based on what we have on our list. I guess I will say I think that some of our proposed additions will address areas of critical need in the agency and provide additional capacity to do our core work. I think we continue to be challenged when we get one-time investments in some of our programs and time-limited staffing to figure out when the programs involve a long-term workload. So I think with the resources we have available to us to request, they are going to get us part of the way there. But yeah, I'm not sure sort of the long-term operations for those programs, how we're going to make that work. Miriam or Eric, anything you want to add? Yeah.
Well, I would just add that we have been very committed to including in any grant, any funding opportunities that comes OWEB's way, to make sure in our fiscal impact statements to include staffing. Make sure that we have that so that it's not to the point I think, Jamie, you're making, that it's current staff taking on additional workload. We really are trying to be mindful of what that additional workload is and building that into our fiscal impact statement so that we can potentially have the funding and the position authority to manage that work. The challenge again is the one-time funding and you have limited duration positions, but the funding may continue, or grant programs may continue on into a future biennium and the positions end at the end of a biennium. So that's why we continue to ask for continuity of these limited duration positions or conversion to a permanent position to make sure that we have that capacity internally.
Thank you. And I just wanted to kind of publicly recognize that's ongoing efforts you guys are doing. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for the presentation. Great information, hard work. Don't envy you, but appreciate the clarity you bring in letting us know. So I don't see other comments or questions. That means that we've made it, we've got a wrap. We have lunch ready. It's a to-go lunch. Oh, Nicole? Yep. I won't go to lunch yet. Yep. Mark, you had some comments that we'd like to hear.
Yeah, thank you. I asked Barbara if I could have just a couple minutes, and I know you're pushing up against lunch and people want to get on that long drive, but I'd just like to take a moment, and I know you did some of this last night, but this probably is Gary's last meeting. So Gary, I want to personally thank you for your service on OWEB, to thank you for your expertise, for your pragmatism and all the work that you've done. So just want to thank you for that. And then Dan Shively, I'd like to take a couple minutes just to talk a little bit about this guy. You know, many years ago when I was a county commissioner, this guy from the Forest Service approached me and a few others about a crazy idea of trying to identify a whole bunch of barriers to fish passage in Tillamook County. And it was back in, I think 2014 or 10 years ago, when a guy named Dan Shively came and said, you know, maybe there's a chance that we could get together with a partnership to put this thing together. And of course, there was some hesitation, but the group got together and pretty much, and Dan's not going to acknowledge this, but under his leadership, this thing got off the ground, and it ended up being the Salmon Superhighway. They've 50 of 93 barriers to fish passage have been reviewed since 2014. 129 miles of habitat have been reconnected, and that's halfway to the goal of 180. $19 million in funding have been received, creating 314 jobs. The Salmon Superhighway leveraged 100,000 of the 750,000 available through the bipartisan infrastructure law. Tillamook County was awarded $2.1 million from federal highways to replacing culverts, and private and foundation funding helped support the capacity of partners to continue to collaborate. It's Dan Shively, who got this thing going. And so, you know, he's kind of a quiet guy. He sits back there and talks a little bit, but you folks need to know that there's people like him who make Oregon a better place. And I know he's going to move on. He's going to move off the OWEB board, but I just can't go without saying, Dan, thank you for your service to Oregon. Thank you for your service on OWEB's board. Thank you for the work that you have done to help our fish and wildlife resources. You have made Oregon a better place because of your service and your continuing service to fish and wildlife. And you are a strong representative of your agency. Your agency is highly respected because of people like you. You're going to be missed, my friend, but I just can't let it go by without saying thank you for your service. Appreciate it very much.
You're here.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to miss OWEB, but I'm going to continue to support OWEB in my existing position. And thanks for all the work that all of you do. Gary, I'm going to miss you as well. And I've been telling people, when you come through Portland, please look me up. Get together for coffee, lunch, whatever. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And Gary, I don't know why you think you get to go somewhere. I didn't hear that, but thank you, Mark, for your comments. Gary, Dan, thank you for being part of OWEB and helping us move this important work forward. Appreciate you all very much, all the board members very much. And with that, I will offer lunch. I will hope for safe travels home. This time I don't have as far to go as you all do, but thanks for making the trip out and a great meeting. Well, adjourn. Thank you.